rearrange the whole game with my rugged sound. Won't even say your own name when I come around.
Over my head, I had $1 million tax
Back
debt.
taxes?
Yeah, I had $1 million tax debt. I had all these other things that.
The West Coast icon of American hip-hop, Xzibit, once made millions of people recognize his face from underground rap to Pimp My Ride. But one day, his name suddenly appeared in a thick stack of legal files tangled with charges that few people had the patience to read through. Dragged into marital property disputes worth tens of millions of dollars, an allegation from a former employee involving serious threats, and a chain of lawsuits stretching over many years, all accusing him of living a double life and committing fraud. So who is Xzibit, really a resilient symbol of hip-hop, or a slow-burning time bomb of America? People rumored that he had been bought by the devil. People whispered that his soul had left with his late mother. What actually happened to Xzibit? Do not look away. The most shocking truths about Xzibit are now about to be exposed. A childhood most people never heard about. Alvin Nathaniel Joyner, known by the stage name Xzibit, was born on September 18, 1974 in Detroit, Michigan. He was born into what was once considered a complete family, with both a father and a mother described as emotionally aware, loving toward their son, and willing to shield him from the harsh collisions of the outside world. His mother was a writer, the first person to plant in the young boy's mind the idea of language imagination and the power of speaking one's thoughts out loud. But everything people often call a solid foundation ended completely when Xzibit was 9 years old, the year his mother passed away. For a child, losing a mother is not just losing a caregiver, it is losing the entire sense of early safety, losing the one person who understands you without explanation. From that point on, Xzibit's family left Detroit and moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico to live with his father. But that stability did not last. Not long after his father remarried, another woman stepped into the role his mother once held, at least in name. This was the period when the boy began writing his first rap lines to release the deep emotions inside him. No one to confide in. No one to open up to. You know how it is. A well-behaved child is often praised for being understanding. And an understanding child is the one who ends up enduring more than others. Xzibit's teenage years quickly fell into chaos. He was expelled from most schools in the Albuquerque public school system for disruptive and defiant behavior. Things grew worse when he turned 14. His father, nearly powerless in dealing with his son, took Xzibit to a Marine Corps recruitment office, more as a cold warning than real guidance. There, he was forced to commit to completing a GED, a credential equivalent to a high school diploma. Even after finishing the program at TVI, Xzibit continued to get into trouble with the law. He was placed under state supervision from age 14 and did not regain his freedom until 17. 3 long years he later described as a form of juvenile prison. His father cut off his living allowance, seeing it as a way to force his son back into line. But instead of returning home to apologize, beg and promise to become the model child, Xzibit chose a different path. He did a little hustling to make his own money, then drove himself to Los Angeles, California, where he believed real opportunities for a music career existed. It was not just a journey to find opportunity, it was also his escape from a strict father and a stepmother who was never truly a mother. The beginning of his music career. Xzibit officially stepped onto the rap path in 1992 at age 18 in Los Angeles. At the time, he called himself Xzibit A and joined the Liquid Crew, a collective that represented pure West Coast spirit. This was not a playground for the weak. The underground scene was a place where anyone without real strength disappeared fast. But Xzibit did not disappear. He learned how to stand on the same stage as hardened names without being swallowed whole. In February 1995, Xzibit made his first professional appearance by contributing vocals to Hit and Run on the Alcoholics album Coast to Coast. After that, he continued collaborating with King T on Freestyle Ghetto. These appearances did not produce instant hits or push him onto the charts, but they accomplished something more important. Industry insiders began to take notice. Xzibit's rap voice carried weight. He did not rap to be liked. He rapped as if he were reclaiming space for himself. In 1996, real momentum arrived. Xzibit signed with Loud Records and released his debut album, At the Speed of Life. The album quickly entered the Billboard 200. No easy achievement for a rapper rising from the underground. 4 singles were released with What You See Is What You Get, reaching number 50 in the United States, while Paparazzi became a West Coast hip-hop track with lasting life. This was the moment Xzibit touched the mainstream without sacrificing his identity. But that was still not the biggest turning point. The moment that changed everything came in the late 1990s, when he caught the attention of Dr. Dre. The clearest opportunity came from B, Please by Snoop Dogg, a track produced by Dr. Dre. On that song, Xzibit's aggressive confrontational style created a sharp contrast with Snoop Dogg's laid-back calm, and that contrast made him stand out. B, Please quickly became one of Snoop Dogg's most successful songs of that period. That impression led to a defining opportunity. In the year 2000, Xzibit joined the Up in Smoke Tour, the legendary tour featuring Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Eminem, and Nate Dogg. Sharing the stage with the biggest icons in hip-hop, Xzibit was not overshadowed. Night after night, he held the crowd's attention in stadiums across the United States. He later reflected, "That tour was a turning point in my career. I was performing in front of crowds full of different energies in stadiums all over the country, and people could feel what I was bringing. And at that moment, every door in Hollywood opened to welcome him." Pimp My Ride, the hit television show. Although music was his foundation, Xzibit's widest fame came from television. From 2004 to 2007, he became the host of Pimp My Ride on MTV, a show that quickly went beyond simple entertainment to become a pop culture phenomenon. For many people, this was the first time they ever knew Xzibit, and for some, the only image they remembered of him. Each episode followed a familiar formula. A beat-up car belonging to a fan was discovered, then taken to West Coast Customs in the early seasons, or Galpin Autosports in later seasons for a complete transformation. Fish tanks, pool tables, giant LCD screens, massive sound systems, details the car owner never dared to dream of. And at the center of it all was Xzibit with boundless energy, smooth jokes, and a presence that made viewers feel he was the one delivering the magic. The show ran for 6 seasons and became one of the most successful programs in MTV history. But behind the lights, the story was far less glamorous than what appeared on screen. Xzibit admitted that the pay he received as host was very low, and more importantly, he did not own the intellectual property of the show. That meant the massive success never truly belonged to him. Worse still, Pimp My Ride consumed too much of his time. Xzibit could not tour consistently, could not focus on making albums. Music, the very root of who he was slowly pushed aside. When the show was sold to other networks and released on DVD, MTV used its editing rights to cut all of Xzibit's music from every episode, and even removed his image from the DVD covers of some seasons. Xzibit expressed his frustration by saying the show was built on his name, yet ultimately turned its back on that very legacy. And when asked about the possibility of a return, his answer was clear. There would be no more Pimp My Ride. When he finally decided to refocus all his energy on music, it was also the moment when Xzibit's life was being hit by a series of scandals and legal disputes. A broken marriage, the hidden side no one saw. Xzibit's real battle did not begin on stage, nor did it explode in front of cameras. It began quietly in 2021 when Krista Joyner filed for divorce, opening a legal fight that stretched nearly 5 years around marital property. From that moment on, the story was no longer about emotional collapse, but about a cold struggle over money control and the future. The central focus of the battle was Brass Knuckles, a premium cannabis company, co-founded by Xzibit and Dr. Dre in 2019. In the media, Brass Knuckles was once valued at around $170 million and expanded distribution into more than 10 states. But this was the core of the tragedy. That figure largely existed on paper, reflecting brand value and future potential, not liquid cash ready to be split in half. Using that valuation alone, dividing assets instantly became a story worth tens of millions of dollars. According to court filings, because Brass Knuckles was established during the marriage, it was automatically considered community property under California law. By the year 2025, Krista Joyner accused Xzibit of secretly selling or restructuring his equity without informing her or the court. Xzibit denied the allegation. But what made the divorce especially tense was his core argument. From Xzibit's perspective, Krista did not directly participate in building, operating, or expanding these cannabis businesses. Therefore, being forced to divide business value based on media valuations was seen as failing to reflect actual effort and as a direct threat to the business structure he had built. On paper, Xzibit could lose roughly $1 to $2 million. But money was never the real pain point. What he lost was far greater his business leverage. As the dispute dragged on, shares were legally frozen, making restructuring nearly impossible. Partners hesitated to sign new contracts. Investors grew cautious. No one wanted to get involved with a business entangled in a divorce battle. At the same time came cash flow restrictions. In court, Xzibit was forced to disclose every source of income from music royalties to television earnings. Every dollar was scrutinized, bringing the risk of monthly spousal support and prolonged financial pressure. But the most draining cost was time and energy. Nearly 5 years of litigation meant massive legal fees, constant stress and distraction from his career. From the outside, the public only saw a name that had grown quieter. Inside, Xzibit was paying the price for a divorce that did not just split a marriage, but tore apart his business future as well. Serious threat allegation. In March 2025, Xzibit's already tense divorce entered a darker phase. This time, it was no longer just about property disputes or business equity. A new allegation emerged, personal and far more serious enough to push the case beyond the boundaries of an ordinary divorce. The petitioner was Julio Garcia, a former driver and vehicle caretaker who had previously worked for Xzibit's family. Garcia filed for a temporary restraining order, stating that he felt seriously threatened regarding his personal safety. According to his declaration, Garcia had worked for both spouses before and after the divorce, filing a position that made him an unwilling witness during the most sensitive phase of the separation. Garcia stated that through his work, he had access to and became aware of information related to assets he believed had not been fully disclosed in the divorce filings. This information, according to his statement, included vehicles' real estate and cannabis storage facilities stretching from Las Vegas to Chatsworth. Because of his role, Garcia said he was approached by Krista Joyner's side with the intention that he testify in court to clarify the disputed picture of marital assets. According to the restraining order request, Garcia alleged that when he expressed his intention to cooperate with Krista's side, he received a direct and personal threat from Xzibit. The specific wording of the statement cited in court records was considered serious enough to make Garcia fear for the safety of himself and his family, leading him to seek a temporary protective order. This detail immediately drew attention as it pushed the divorce dispute into an entirely different realm. The response from Xzibit's side came quickly and forcefully. His attorney, Victor Balladares, sent a cease and desist letter to Krista's attorney, Chris Armenta. In that document, Balladares denied all allegations related to threatening behavior and described Krista's legal strategy as improper, unfounded, and exceeding ethical boundaries. The letter went beyond simply rejecting the allegation. Balladares also detailed what he described as evidence that Krista Joyner was not in financial hardship. According to the letter, Krista was allegedly receiving approximately $30,000 per month under a court-ordered support arrangement. She was also said to have rented luxury properties, purchased a new BMW with cash, and maintained a lifestyle that Xzibit's side argued was inconsistent with claims of hidden assets. In the same document, Balladares accused Krista's side of making a series of serious claims, ranging from allegations that Xzibit concealed assets and committed financial misconduct to insinuations about personal behavior, without presenting evidence sufficient to stand in court. He also warned that if these allegations continued to be circulated, Xzibit's side would consider stronger legal actions, including civil complaints and reports to relevant professional authorities. On the other side, attorney Chris Armenta immediately rejected any claim of unethical conduct. Armenta stated that her role was not to launch personal attacks, but to protect her client's legal rights. According to Armenta, investigating where community property or assets that could be used to enforce a judgment might be located is a fundamental right in a high-asset divorce, especially when there are suspicions that certain assets have not been fully disclosed. At this point, the case had gone far beyond the image of a private separation. It became a public legal confrontation, where each side attempted to control the narrative from money and reputation to public image. A follow-up hearing viewed as an opportunity for both sides to present and clarify the allegations was scheduled for March 19, 2025. Notably, even without any ruling having been issued, these allegations had already left a deep crack in Xzibit's public image. Not because they had been proven, but because they illustrated the level of toxicity that a divorce lasting nearly 5 years can generate. When money control and the fear of losing everything collide at once, the line between civil dispute and personal crisis becomes thinner than ever. And for Xzibit, this may be a battle that determines not only his assets, but how the public ultimately looks back on his entire legacy. The Brass Knuckles Lawsuit. Before marital turmoil and personal allegations made headlines, Xzibit had already emerged from another legal battle quieter, but no less intense. That was the lawsuit involving Brass Knuckles, which lasted from 2018 to 2022, and ended in a clear victory for Xzibit and Dr. Dre. The case began when 3 men filed suit, claiming they had been promised a substantial ownership stake in Brass Knuckles from the earliest days. According to them, the figure discussed was far higher than the 14.5% they claimed they actually received. As the brand grew rapidly, long simmering disagreements erupted into a formal lawsuit accusing the 2 most prominent figures behind the company of breach of contract. The core issue of the lawsuit lay in the shift in valuation. Initially, Brass Knuckles was viewed as a promising cannabis brand, with an estimated value of around $50 million. But shortly afterward, as distribution expanded across multiple states, the valuation cited in the media jumped to around $170 million. This leap completely changed the dynamics among the parties involved. Xzibit and Dr. Dre argued that the 3 plaintiffs only filed suit after seeing the new figure, and that their true motivation was not violated rights, but greed. This argument was presented clearly in court. The legal teams for Xzibit and Dr. Dre emphasized that there was no evidence of any commitment to a larger equity share beyond what had already been agreed upon. They argued that the plaintiffs had accepted the original structure and only returned with additional demands after the company's value surged. After years of litigation, the court sided with Xzibit and Dr. Dre. The 3 plaintiffs received no compensation, and the case concluded with a publicly filed settlement notice closing 4 years of prolonged litigation. Alongside the equity lawsuit, Brass Knuckles also faced another allegation related to product quality. At one point, the brand was accused of having vape cartridges containing pesticides, an allegation serious enough to threaten major reputational damage. However, after review, the California Supreme Court dismissed the claim, stating there was no legal basis to continue pursuing the case. This was seen as yet another instance in which Brass Knuckles avoided being pulled into a major crisis. Looking back at the period from 2018 to 2022, it is clear that Xzibit emerged from this battle with a win. He retained his equity, preserved the brand, and avoided unfavorable judgments. But that victory also revealed another side of the business world he had entered. Cannabis was not just an opportunity, but a harsh legal battlefield where every valuation figure could trigger litigation. And ironically, these very victories later became the foundation for even larger disputes in Xzibit's personal life, when business value was placed under scrutiny in a divorce that dragged on for years. Partnership with Conor McGregor. While personal legal disputes remained unresolved, Xzibit surprised the public by announcing a new move in his music career. Recently, he signed a partnership with Greenback Records, a record label owned by Conor McGregor. The decision immediately sparked debate, not because of the music, but because of the name behind the label. Conor McGregor is one of the most famous fighters in the world, but his reputation has long been accompanied by controversy. Over the years, McGregor has repeatedly been linked to personal scandals and serious allegations ranging from inappropriate conduct to sensitive legal issues. While these allegations remain contested and have not always resulted in final conclusions, McGregor's public image is clearly no longer that of a purely sporting icon. As a result, Xzibit's decision to align himself with a label tied to this name led many to question the timing and the choice of partner. Xzibit's response was direct. He stated that he did not care about the noise surrounding McGregor. The only thing that mattered to him was the vision of Greenback Records. According to Xzibit, the label offers artists greater control over their work, free from the suffocating structures of the old music industry. For him, that was the decisive factor, not the controversies surrounding the label's owner. This answer clearly reflects Xzibit's current mindset. After years of being pulled into lawsuits and personal disputes, he appears to have adopted a more pragmatic stance. No longer seeking absolute safety and public image, he prioritizes platforms that allow him to continue creating and releasing music on his own terms. For Xzibit, music at this stage is no longer a race for fame, but a matter of control and autonomy. The concrete result of this partnership was the album Kingmaker, released in May 2025 under the Greenback Records label. The project marked Xzibit's return after a long period of relative silence and served as a statement that he had not stepped away from hip-hop. Releasing Kingmaker amid ongoing personal turmoil added another layer of meaning to the album. It was not just a musical release, but a declaration of continued existence. Although the choice to partner with Greenback Records was controversial, it showed Xzibit's willingness to accept risk in order to retain control. To longtime fans, this was a familiar image of him. An artist who does not try to please everyone, does not shy away from difficult decisions, and accepts that the path he walks will always provoke mixed reactions. With Kingmaker, Xzibit did not simply release a new album. He placed a bet on a vision despite the constant noise surrounding it. How did this all happen without us noticing? There is one thing that needs to be said very clearly. Xzibit did not disappear. He did not die. He did not announce retirement. He did not step away from music. He did not vanish from creative life. What disappeared, if anything did, was not Xzibit. It was our attention to his story. This is not the story of an artist who fell off. This is the story of a media system whose rhythm of breathing has changed, and of people who no longer fit that rhythm being left behind in near silence. No farewell applause, no big headlines, no official goodbye. Just one day, people stopped telling the story. For many years, Xzibit was the image of victory. From a childhood marked by loss, violence, and instability, he rose through rap. From the underground, he stepped into the mainstream without losing his identity. He shared stages with icons. He had platinum albums. He became the face of an iconic television show. His story was once perfect for the media because it contained everything the system loved: effort, success spotlight, and the feeling of upward motion. But then the storytelling rhythm changed. Modern media no longer has patience for long journeys. It does not care about process. It hunts for moments. And the moments it wants are usually moments of total victory or total collapse. Between those two extremes, there is no room for people struggling to keep their balance. Xzibit fell squarely into that blind spot. He did not collapse in a sensational way. No criminal scandal ended his career. No fall dramatic enough to turn him into a headline for months. But he was also no longer the victory symbol the system wanted to keep polishing. He entered a more complicated phase of life. A prolonged divorce, asset disputes, business litigation, stories that demand context, patience, and long-term attention. And that is exactly what modern media no longer finds appealing. When an artist no longer delivers the feeling of winning, the system quietly pulls away. Not with an official statement, but with silence. Fewer articles, rarer interviews. Algorithms no longer push his name to the top of the feed. And audiences, guided by what is placed in front of them, gradually come to believe that person is done. What matters is that Xzibit never stopped working. He kept releasing music, kept doing business, kept engaging in complex legal battles that would wear down anyone in that position. But those efforts do not create the feeling of victory. They are not clean. They are not easy to package into a short clip or a shocking headline. And so they are ignored. There is a cold paradox in modern culture. We talk a lot about endurance, about resilience, about getting back up after setbacks. But in reality, the system only truly cares about two moments: when you are at the peak and when you hit the bottom. The long stretch in between, where people strain to keep living, fix mistakes, pay the price, and hold on to what remains, is not compelling enough to be told. Xzibit became a victim of exactly that. Not because he did everything wrong, but because his story shifted into a phase the media no longer knew how to frame. He was no longer the hip-hop victory symbol of the early 2000s, but he was also not a complete tragedy. He existed in a suspended state where complexity exceeded the system's ability to digest quickly. This collective silence is dangerous because it makes us believe everything is fine, that if a name no longer appears, they must have stepped away. that if no one is talking about it, there must be nothing worth saying. But reality is the opposite. It is precisely in that silence that the most important stories are unfolding without witnesses. And this is not only Xzibit's story. He is simply an easy example, because we once knew him well. But how many other names are there? How many artists, actors, athletes, entrepreneurs who were once symbols of an era are now quietly struggling with the aftermath of fame, of decisions of systems they once trusted? They did not disappear. There is simply no one left telling their stories. Looking back, the frightening part is not that Xzibit is no longer at the center of the spotlight. The frightening part is how easily we accept that disappearance as natural. We have grown used to seeing only what is pushed in front of us, and forgetting that behind the screen are real people, with lives that never unfold according to the editing rhythm of media. If this can happen to Xzibit, someone who once stood at the intersection of music, television, and popular culture, then the final question is no longer just about him. It is about all of us. How many other names are disappearing right in front of us, not because they stopped, but because we stopped looking?
Today's content may reference public figures, businesses, or social events. However, all mentions are intended for exploratory purposes only and are not meant as accusations or judgments. That's the reality of the game. Fame always comes with a price. If you vibe with the content and want the real uncut stories, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to the Black Vault.